Welcome to a new edition of Mississippi Stories. I am your host, Marshall Ramsey, editor-at-large and editorial cartoonist with Mississippi Today. The Sun and Sand Hotel. Now, I got here in 1996, so the Sun and Sand was still operational. It was still going. It's where the legislators lived. It's where the parties happened. It's where a lot of our legislation happened as well. Out in front of it, of course, it's right nearly across from the state capitol. There's a huge sign. And the sign was very iconic, beautiful mid-century 50s modernism design and so forth. Well, in 2001, the Sun and Sand closed, and it sat empty for many years, and the hotel itself deteriorated. And by 2020, it became literally on an endangered species list, where they're being torn down. And it has, of course, the hotel part of it has been torn down. However, the state of Mississippi bought the property in 2019 and saved the sign, and they saved, I guess, the front part of the building, not the hotel part of the building. Well, this is where the story gets interesting. The sign itself has gone through an incredible journey, and I have with us here today Scott Allen. He's with A+ Signs. He is kind of the conductor, the orchestra that helped get the sign back up, looking better than ever. And what's so really cool, like I said, it's an iconic fixture in downtown Jackson, and it looks fantastic. Scott, thanks, man. It's so
Thank
good.
you.
Number
Thank
one, you are an incredibly talented artist in your own right, and it's just really cool to get to meet with you. I hope some of your talent rubs off on me.
Oh, no, that means a lot coming from you. I've been
Yeah.
a fan for a long time. So,
Yeah, so there's a couple parts of this story. Number one, we're going to talk about the sign, and also two, you now own another iconic piece of property in Jackson that you're restoring. So
yeah.
you are accidentally getting into the restoration business.
I don't know how this happened. If you would have told me that 10 years ago, I would have been like, no way. But yeah.
Yeah, so when you brought the property where your sign company is, on that property is the 1929 Art Deco radio tower for WJDX.
That's right. That's right.
Which is an awesome building.
It's a beautiful building. I used to ride by it, I don't know, several times a week, and just would dream about like having an art studio in it, or something. I don't know. That I do that with a lot of
if you ever do
around
art
town.
studios there, man, let me know, because I mean I'll rent one from you, because it's a cool building.
It is. The building is a work of art by N.W. Overstreet, who's kind of known as the godfather of Mississippi architecture.
Yeah, who designed your house as well?
Who also designed my house, and he studied under Frank Lloyd Wright, and was kind of a nationally renowned architect. So
there's several of his houses in Fondren, correct?
Several, and people that have worked underneath him.
Yeah.
So he didn't do a lot of residential stuff, but mostly commercial properties.
Well, let's start with the sign. Okay. Yeah. How did you get involved with it? Because I know it came down. It was down for like a year and a half, and it came down. I know there was another sign company who did a great job trying to get it going and everything. Yeah. But you kind of took it over in midstream.
I did. I heard that things were maybe kind of going the wrong direction on the sign, and they had removed it, and I got a call from another sign company actually about potentially collaborating. And
which this is the Sun and Sand, by the way. I meant to hold
that
up.
Yeah, love the illustration. But so it kind of took some coercion, because I'm not really in the restoration business. I primarily make new signs because they're not as scary as restorations. Kind of like old houses, you don't really know what you're going to get until you kind of get into it.
And then you get Department of Archives and History in on it too.
Yeah,
so that adds another layer.
Right. No pressure there. Restoring something for the history department. So, so I kind of, I decided to take the project on, and kind of felt like I would act more as a general contractor in the sign business. So, collaborated with other companies, and took about probably altogether 6-8 months.
Okay. 6 or 8 months. And I kind of got interested in it. I was just kind of following along with it because two things. Number one, I went to this airplane museum where they dug a bunch of planes out of, or pulled them up out of Lake Michigan, and they were crumpled balls, and they restored them to make look them brand new. I'm like, how did they do that? And so I kind of fell into that process. How do you make parts when you don't have parts? How do you make tools when you don't have tools? So that got interesting. And then I went to Vicksburg and saw the USS Cairo, and I was looking at the pictures of the crumpled paddle wheel, the iron crumpled paddle wheel, and then I was looking at it, and I was like, oh, that must be a replica. Well, the daughter of the guy who actually restored it said on my Twitter, oh no, Dad straightened that out. I'm like, how do you do that? And so when I started reading about your process and how y'all worked on this, y'all were dealing with, number one, you didn't have the tools. Number two, you didn't have, I mean, it's not like there's a full set of blueprints or how to do it or anything.
Right,
So you're kind of like reverse engineering everything and trying to figure this out.
Definitely. I think the only thing that I can kind of compare it to is having restored old cars and been around that my entire life. My dad restored antiques and stuff. And, you know, I kind of approached it from that perspective.
Yeah.
And that is very similar craft. I mean, straightening metal and welding, fabrication, you know, having to make something when, you know, you get into old hot rods and stuff. I mean, it's sort of Frankensteining things together. Like there is no manual.
Yeah.
You have to make everything. So it's, you know, you just can't be scared of it. You got to just kind of do it.
Yeah.
You know? And that's what I learned from that side of it. So I don't think that I was intimidated by, you know, it looked bad when I got it. So,
Okay.
you know, you know, I just like I treated it like a motorcycle. I was like, we got to disassemble it, bag and tag it, and just take it by phases.
Yeah, but to say you literally broke it down into pieces and said, okay, this is kind of the steps that we're going to make on it. I know I remember looking, I was downtown, I guess in probably I don't know. I left downtown in 2019. So the last time I saw it up, it looked pretty rough. Right. I'm sure when you broke it apart, you probably found Jimmy Hoffa and Amelia Earhart and several dead squirrels. And Frank Melton was hiding in there. And,
Frank.
No, Frank is not with us anymore.
Right, right. There was, everything you can imagine. Definitely, you know, some rat's nest and, you know.
Oh, my.
But, and then most of the cladding of the sign is acrylic, so it was so brittle. And, you know, we saved what we could, but you know,
1950s acrylic too.
1950s acrylic, yeah. And so I mean, that was really the whole mission. And you know, and working with archives and history was just try to reuse as much as you can.
Yeah. And they were great to work with, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So yeah, we did. I mean, you know, disassembling something, you know, painstakingly so that you're not breaking or damaging things is hard. So, and then from there, just sought out other, you know, subcontracting parts that, you know, where I felt like, you know, maybe somebody else would probably do a better job.
Yeah, and that, I mean, obviously you're in the business. You knew several of your friends and stuff.
I worked with a lot of these people already. Yeah. So, to mention those, RDM Ironworks. Did a lot of the trim pieces with, like, they don't make a lot of these dies and crimpers and stuff that they do, like, and Bobby Meadows with RDM, he's got one machine that made the rivets for the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, it's the old Nazelle, I think, you know, certain stuff. So I know he would be the right guy for like stamping out some of those parts. Wicker Brothers in Florence, sandblasted, powder coating on the frame. Again, kind of like a car, you know, so like strip it down, let's do the frame, treat it, replace any like rusty metal, and then rainbow signs on a lot of the, you know, helping move it around, and the install. I'm trying to think. Sign Pros in Meridian help with the formed plastic pieces that some of the restaurant letters that were polycard formed. They don't make a lot, like the corrugated message boards are not made anymore. That was real common back in the day.
Oh yeah, I guess now they just use like electronic signs.
Right. Yeah, people do. Yeah, just digital message boards and stuff like that. So, getting that vintage look back.
Yeah, that was the mission, and
that was the mission. Yeah.
I got to say, there's a lot of different things I want to ask you about it, but I mean, that day when you transported it from your shop off of North State Street, you know, that had to be the longest 30 minutes of your life.
It was. Yeah, I almost had. I don't think I won't forget the interstate ride. Yeah.
Oh, you took on the interstate?
Yeah, we had a large caravan, and we took it. We felt like the interstate was probably the safest bet. We didn't have to worry about power lines. We knew we were under the regulation height, and it's also the smoothest ride post State Street. So we were like, let's just get it on there. We went slow. Probably, I think we were bottlenecking traffic on at 8 o'clock, rush hour traffic in the morning. So it was. But yet, the scariest part for me was getting it there.
Yeah. Could you see hitting a pothole and that thing flying off the back of the truck?
I was a nervous wreck. Once we got on site, I was like, okay, this is the easy part, you know?
Yeah, I didn't turn on the news that day. Scott Allen lost his mind after the sign broke into 150 pieces.
It was terrible. I couldn't sleep the night before. It was, So,
and then
we got it done.
Boy, I tell you what, the first pictures of it though, and it lit up. And one thing you did do, and it's not original, you didn't do fluorescent lights. You did LED lights, which you know that makes sense. It looks amazing lit up.
Yeah, it's super bright. I mean, probably, you know, as far as the lighting goes, much better quality than what you would have had originally.
Yeah.
the LEDs too, you know, they're much more energy efficient, low maintenance. So I mean, they were definitely the way to go. We did do them in a fashion in rows to sort of mimic fluorescent tubing.
Yeah.
By doing them in line, but much better quality.
Yeah, you don't have to go change bulbs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that
Right.
helps. Why was it important to say that sign?
Gosh, I mean, there's so much history there. I mean, at some point, you know, we can't let things just fall down. I mean, you know, John Grisham wrote The Time to Kill there. I mean, there's civil rights history. There's, you know, apparently you went there before you joined the military. It's your last stop. I mean, I can go on and on.
Yeah, I mean, from 1960,
I don't know.
yeah, from 1960 to 2001, it really was an epicenter of both. I mean, more legislation probably got made in that hotel than happened in the Capitol.
In the Capitol, yeah. But yeah, for all those reasons, I mean, for me, I mean, it's the most iconic sign in Mississippi. I mean, arguably, I mean, I bought a book about signs, Mississippi signs, like prior to taking on the Sun and Sand project, and it was on the cover of it. So I mean, you know, my whole life, I painted a picture of it probably 15, 20 years ago. I mean, it's kind of one of those things, like they ought to just put an X on the sidewalk and says artist stand here, you know?
Yeah.
It's just one of those, it's an architectural masterpiece.
Yeah.
I mean, the people that made it were true craftsmen of their day.
Yeah. I really hate they had to tear down the hotel.
Yeah.
But also too, I remember I watched a Walt Grayson report about it right before and it's like there literally was green mold growing up and down the walls on the inside of it. It was pretty bad shape, but they did say part of it. They said it was the Polynesian room area, and it's sad that I know that.
And it's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, I think they've done a great job. You know, I'm being, you know, a fan of history, and I'm for saving all things, you know, if it's possible, you know, but. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many reasons, and me being, you know, in the sign business, you know, it was a dream, you know, it was a passion project.
So is this going to be like a new part of your business now?
No, I don't think so. It's kind of back to business as usual now.
Back to new stuff. So.
Right. I'm not really in the restoration business. I can do it, but that's not necessarily my focus. But
you got to be proud of it.
I am very proud of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely one of those, you know, there's not many times in your career you do stuff like that.
When you're working with the Department of Archives and History on that, what were they like to work with on it? Because number one, I think they do a fantastic job in the state, obviously.
Oh, I do too.
But I mean, did they have records? Were they helpful? Did they say, okay, this kind of needs to look like this, or what was that process?
Yeah, I mean, they had a lot of stuff, you know, sort of pre-spec'd out.
Okay.
You know,
that helps.
Yeah, it was. No, I mean, it was just well put together. They were great to work with. You know, I mean, that is kind of one of those things where, you know, you might originally be a little concerned about, like, you know, are we gonna please them? You know, but yeah, no, they were. You know, every time we kind of met about it, and you know, it was thumbs up, keep moving.
Yeah, I was amazed at how much original stuff is still in the sign. I mean, like even the acrylic stuff, that was like about half.
Half of one whole side of all the acrylic lettering is about 98% original.
And that was the north side probably because it was out of the sun.
I believe so. Yeah. I'm getting my directions right, but yeah. And a lot of the yellow acrylic has, you know, almost all of it has been replaced. It was beyond repair. I did, you know, now you can buy like big sheets of this like polycarbon stuff, and so you would not approach that same design the same way,
right? Because
of what we have available. It also was all, steel. Now everything's aluminum. You don't use much steel except for some sort of heavy hitting structural support. But but we tiled all the acrylic back because I realized it was done as a decorative thing. Yeah. You know, it was like there was so much thought about the Sun and Sand sign that was purely aesthetic. Yeah, it served no purpose. Like there's boomerangs flying, you know, and
it was truly the 1950s.
It was just wild. It's but you know, that boomerang guitar pick shapes, and you know, you saw that a lot with coffee tables, you know, certain styles of mid-century furniture, and the car. You know, that's an era in American design that, you know, arguably was at its height. Yeah. And then that was when in America we were still making, primarily everything. So
And there were still huge fins on cars.
there were still fins on cars. Same thing. Served no purpose, but
But they were awesome.
But they were great.
They were influenced by jet fighters
Right,
and
right.
all the great technology of the time.
Yeah, and wild colors too. Like now,
Yeah.
all the cars are black or white, and so it's or silver. And, this thing's
Well, that's
it's
what's
so out of the box.
It's so out of the box, and what's so cool about it is when you do see it lit up and it's just bright. I would think though, a lot of the things, like I said, with like the LED lights and things like that, when do you think it's going to have to be rehabbed again?
I've got signs that I've been doing LEDs for 10 years that I've never touched.
Really?
I mean,
Yeah, so
they
The
go.
sign itself, you think, is going to probably hang around for a while?
Oh yeah, and I would say the quality of a lot of the plastics and stuff are better with more UV protections and stuff. I was also, I use it as a learning experience. I was like, this thing's been up since 1960. I mean, some of the stuff's still in great shape. Like kind of changed what my thoughts on some certain materials.
I'm a 67 model and I'm not in good shape, so I'm being replaced by titanium parts now. So.
Titanium parts for sure.
But now this is getting to be a thing with you because, like I said, you got the WJDX
right.
radio transmitter building as well now that's on your property where your sign company is.
Right.
Which, folks, if you've never seen it, it's on North State Street, which was built in 1929. You got to think that was way out in the boonies in the country.
Oh, I mean, some of the paperwork says 7 miles from Jackson. So, I mean, I guess Jackson was probably Fondren at that time. Maybe.
At the most.
That was the suburbs of Jackson. So, I mean, it was probably a dirt road.
Yeah.
Between there and Tougaloo, I would
Right.
say.
The studios weren't there originally. They were in the Lamar Life building.
That's right.
Because Lamar Life owned it.
That's right. And that was Eudora Welty's dad, I believe, that commissioned
CW. He signed off on it.
Right.
Yeah.
And her, I think, first job was there as a copywriter. And apparently holding, the cards up.
It worked out well for her.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. But it was out. It was out. It was. I mean, there's no well on the property. I mean, from what I can tell, it was probably an old farm.
Yeah. And you're talking about 1960s design. Once again, back in the 20s, that was Art Deco, and it was an Art Deco version of a Philco radio.
That's right. It was meant to look like the old kind of plastic radios. That style.
With stained glass and
stained glass. I think it's just cool. I mean, it's just the pinnacle of design for me.
The concrete Art Deco mural on it. I mean,
right.
Come on, who does that sort of
there thing? Again, it's like with these buildings and with some of the stuff from that time period, of so much just done for aesthetic reasons, like the way that it's
like Bailey
sort
Magnet
of tear and
School
stuff
and
like
things
that.
that.
It's now it's everything too so value engineered. It's how can we make it as affordable as possible.
Well, you're doing something that's, speaking of 67 models, the big concrete block, which became the studio that was right in front of it,
right,
tearing that down. So you can actually see the building now.
Yes, that's a shame that they ever put that there. I mean, I understand that them needing to consolidate, have the studio at the same place, but it's just very unthoughtful. No offense to anybody still around that built that, but it was just a cinder block building, cube, stuck in front of this beautiful piece of architecture, and so it was just driving me crazy. I had to get it gone. I
mean, and WJDX, obviously one of the iconic. It was the first radio station in Jackson.
One of the first in the state, I think. But and as far as I know, I know more about history now. I don't know because
see that's the cool thing. That's the cool thing when you start toying around that you get people contact you and tell you the stories.
Yeah, they start reaching out to you, and so apparently there's some WZZQ documentaries coming out and all that stuff. A lot of the radio stations originated from the WJDX. Even the news station, WWT, apparently spawned off of that. So, I've learned all those things. People giving me a little bits of information. Apparently, the founder of MTV worked there as well.
Yeah.
Bob Pittman, maybe. Okay. But it's been a fun project.
What's the best story that you've gotten to? I mean, I was just thinking about, because I know with the Sun and Sand, everybody probably, because I put on Facebook and like suddenly everybody's like telling stories and everything else about parties they went to or whatever.
Yeah.
Or when they stayed there.
Right.
Really
right.
Cool.
Oh yeah. Everybody's got.
Some of them probably aren't, repeatable here.
Right.
On a
right.
family
I've heard all sorts of stuff about that. The radio station. I can't think of any necessarily in particular that stand out. I mean, other than just, I know just people, it was such like a lifeline for news that, people in the area would sit outside the building and listen to, a boxing match or, just, it was just, that was all that you had back then, and I don't know, there's so many, most of them are just historical stuff where I'm just like, oh wow.
So what are your plans for it?
It kind of changes by the day. I mean, probably it originally was an apartment, or I guess you call it an apartment. It was a home with a big amplifiers, transmitters downstairs. So I mean, to put it back to truly what it was, I thought like an Airbnb up top, and you get to stay in an old Mississippi radio station, and then some sort of supporting coffee shop stand downstairs for, I guess, for the guests mainly, but for anybody, but also just like a doubles as a place where you could have events or something like that. A usable public space downstairs, kind of have maybe a little art gallery, because art galleries are so profitable.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm going to do so, I got to make some sort of business out of it.
Yeah.
So, I have had an Airbnb before too, so it's not too foreign for me. So, that's my current thought, and I don't know. I might end up living there one day. I'm not sure.
One thing I do like about you, you're not afraid to try anything. I mean, if you can take on a sign that's literally that old, that needs to be resurrected. I mean, it's like a phoenix that things back up.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of always been my attitude. Is just is if you don't necessarily, you don't have to know everything about it, but I feel like don't be afraid to reach out to people that do, and kind of know where your boundaries are, so that you do things right, but I kind of know a little bit about a lot, but not too much about any particular thing, but so it's I'm not in a big hurry. It's just a fun fun project, but hopefully in the next few years I can get it up and running.
Yeah,
it's getting put on the National Registry. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I think it's March they review it.
Nice.
So at that point, I can do like historical tax credits and stuff like that. So there's some things that I've kind of been on hold until I get that. I need to get a roof on it as soon as possible. And windows. So.
Probably helps.
Right. Yeah. I've got a small a natural garden going on the roof right now that has to be removed before I can put a TPO roof or something like that on there. So.
Scott, man, thank you so much for coming in today and telling that story. Like I said, the Sun and Sand, if you get a chance, like I said, it's right near the Capitol, and check it out. It's really gorgeous.
Thank you.
And we're going to run some pictures on the interview too, obviously. So and thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, and thank you for watching another episode of Mississippi Stories. If you want to check out more stories or more of our great journalism at Mississippi Today, you can go to MississippiToday.org and find it. Oh, you can also find some okay cartoons as well. Y'all be back next week, and thank you so much. And I'm Marshall Ramsey.